Assalamu alaikum students. Today we will learn about the ventricles of the brain. The ventricles are fluid-filled cavities located within the brain. There are two lateral ventricles, the third ventricle and the fourth ventricle. The two lateral ventricles communicate with these are the lateral ventricles. They communicate with the third ventricle through interventricular foramen of Monro. The third ventricle is connected to the fourth ventricle by a canal known as, this is the fourth ventricle. So this is connected by the third ventricle by a canal known as cerebral aqueduct. This is a narrow channel. The fourth ventricle in turn is continuous with the narrow canal that is known as central canal in the lower part of medulla oblongata and the spinal cord. The central canal in the spinal cord has a small dilatation at its inferior end, referred to as the terminal ventricle. Now, the ventricles are lined throughout with ependyma and are filled with cerebrospinal fluid. The ventricles are developmentally derived from the cavity of the neural tube. Lateral ventricle, it is the cavity of the cerebral hemisphere, and there are two large lateral ventricles, and the ventricle is roughly C-shaped cavity and may be divided into body, which occupies the parietal layer. This is the body, which it occupies the parietal lobe, then the various processes which extend into the frontal lobe. This is the anterior process, and the one extend into the occipital lobe is the posterior process, and the one extend into the inferior lobe is the temporal lobe is the inferior process, inferior horn. So, and this is the central part of the body. This is the central part or the body of the lateral ventricle. So, lateral ventricle is C-shaped structure, and it has got a body and three horns: interior, posterior and inferior horn. Again, you can see this is the superior view of the ventricular system, and lateral ventricle, there are two lateral ventricles, anterior horn in the frontal lobe, posterior horn extending into the occipital lobe, and the inferior horn extending into the temporal lobe. Body is in the parietal lobe. The posterior inferior horns are connected by in the trigone area. Now, the body or the central part. Now, this is the section of the brain showing the body or the central part of the lateral ventricle. So, it has got a roof, a floor, medial wall and lateral wall. So, its roof is formed by the corpus callosum, trunk of the corpus callosum. This is the white matter, fibers, white fibers. This is the corpus callosum. So, roof is formed by the corpus callosum. Floor is sloping from lateral to medial side. So, from laterally, body of caudate nucleus, then upper surface of thalamus, choroid plexus and body of fornix. Medial wall is formed by the septum pellucidum, and lateral wall is the narrow area between the roof and the medial wall. So, here again, this is the section showing the body or the central part of the lateral ventricle, and you can see that roof is formed by the corpus callosum, while floor is formed by the from lateral to medial side the caudate nucleus, stria medullaris, thalamostriate vein, superior surface of the thalamus, and then the choroid plexus and body of fornix. Inferior horn in the frontal lobe, it is located in the frontal lobe, and the relations of this interior horn is that the roof is formed by the corpus callosum, body of the corpus callosum, trunk of the corpus callosum. Floor is formed by the rostrum of the corpus callosum. Anteriorly lies the genu of the corpus callosum, and medially lies the septum pellucidum, and laterally lies the head of the caudate nucleus, which I will be showing you in the next. Now, here you can see The anterior horn roof is formed by corpus callosum, and the lateral wall is formed by the caudate nucleus head, and medially the septum pellucidum. Here again the anterior horn of the lateral ventricle, and you can see the lateral boundaries and the medial boundary. The medial boundary is formed by the septum pellucidum, and roof is formed by the corpus callosum, and laterally lies the head of caudate nucleus. Now, the posterior horn, it lies in the occipital lobe. It extends into the occipital lobe, and it has a roof, lateral wall, and floor. So they are formed by, roof is formed by the tapetum of the corpus callosum, and laterally lies the optic radiation. Medially, there are two elevations called the, one is called the bulb of the posterior horn, and the other one is called the calcar avis. The uh, the uh, the the superior swelling, which is caused by the superior swelling which I have told you, is the bulb of the posterior horn. It is formed by the splenial fibers of the corpus callosum called the forceps major, passing posteriorly into the occipital lobe. This superior swelling is also referred to as the bulb of the posterior horn. Now, the inferior swelling is produced by the calcarine sulcus and is called the calcar avis. Inferior horn, it lies in the temporal lobe, and roof is formed by the tapetum, tail of the caudate nucleus, amygdaloid nucleus, not shown here, and stria terminalis. While floor is formed by the hippocampus, fimbria of hippocampus, and collateral eminence. So here is collateral eminence, and again fimbria, this is the fimbria, and this is the hippocampus. So lateral wall, floor is formed by these structures, while lateral wall is also formed by the tapetum of the corpus callosum. Choroid plexus of the lateral ventricle. Uh, the choroid plexus projects into the ventricle on its medial aspect and is a vascular fringe composed of pia mater covered with ependymal lining of the ventricular cavity. The choroid plexus is in fact the irregular lateral edges of the tela choroidea, which is two-layered fold of pia mater situated between the fornix superiorly and the superior surface of the thalamus. At the junction of the body of lateral ventricle and the inferior horn, the choroid plexus is continuous into the inferior horn. You can see here it is present in the body of the lateral ventricle, and then it is continuous in the inferior horn and projects through the choroidal fissure. The function of the choroid plexus is to produce cerebrospinal fluid. So there is no choroidal plexus in the anterior horn or the posterior horn. Third ventricle. Now, the third ventricle, it is a slit-like cleft between the two thalami. Here you can see this is a slit-like cleft, and it communicates anteriorly with the lateral ventricles through the interventricular foramen of Monro, and posteriorly with the fourth ventricle here through this narrow channel known as cerebral aqueduct. This is the fourth ventricle. So the boundaries of third ventricle, the anterior wall is formed by a thin sheet of grey matter, the lamina terminalis. So this is the lamina terminalis, across which runs the anterior commissure. The anterior commissure is a rounded bundle of nerve fibers that are situated anterior to the anterior columns of the fornix. They connect the right and left temporal lobes. So the anterior boundary of third ventricle is formed by the lamina terminalis, the anterior commissure, and the anterior column of the fornix. The posterior wall is formed by opening in the cerebral aqueduct. This is the opening in the cerebral aqueduct, and superior to the opening is the small posterior commissure. Superior to the commissure is the pineal recess, which projects into the stalk of the pineal body or the gland. So here you can see the posterior commissure, the stalk of the pineal gland, and then in the end is the superior to the pineal recess is the small habenular commissure. Lateral wall is formed by the medial surface of the thalamus superiorly and the hypothalamus inferiorly. These two structures are separated by hypothalamic sulci. So this is the thalamus and this is the hypothalamus. This is the hypothalamic sulcus. The lateral walls are joined by interthalamic connections. This is the interthalamic connection. The superior wall or roof is formed by the layer of ependyma that is continuous with the lining of the ventricle. Superior to this layer is a two-fold layer of pia mater, the tela choroidea of the third ventricle. So the tela choroidea of the third ventricle lies in the roof. The vascular tela choroidea projects downward on each side of the midline, invaginating the ependymal roof to form the choroid plexus of the third ventricle. Within the tela choroidea lie the internal cerebral veins. Superiorly, the roof of the ventricle is related to the fornix and the corpus callosum. The inferior wall or floor is formed by the optic chiasma, the tuber cinereum, the infundibulum with its funnel-shaped recess and the mammillary bodies, and then hypophysis is attached to the infundibulum. Posterior to these structures lies the tegmentum of the cerebral peduncle. So you can see these structures: optic chiasma, the infundibulum, the mammillary body, and the tegmentum of the midbrain. So this lies in the floor of the third ventricle. So here again you can see it is a clit-like structure. The choroid plexus is present in the roof, and laterally lies the thalamus and the hypothalamus. The cerebral aqueduct or aqueduct of Sylvius, a narrow channel about 3/4 of an inch long, connects the third ventricle with the fourth ventricle. It is lined by ependyma and is surrounded by a layer of grey matter called the central gray. The direction of flow of the cerebrospinal fluid is from the third ventricle to the fourth ventricle. So here you can see the third ventricle. This is the cerebral aqueduct, the narrow channel connecting the fourth ventricle with the third ventricle. And flow of CSF is from third ventricle to the fourth ventricle. And there is no choroid plexus in the cerebral aqueduct. And this is the duct of the midbrain. Fourth ventricle is a tent-shaped cavity filled with cerebrospinal fluid. It is situated anterior to the cerebellum. So this is the fourth ventricle, tent-shaped, and this is the cerebellum. So this fourth ventricle is located anterior to the cerebellum but posterior to the pons and the upper part of the medulla oblongata. It is lined with ependyma and is continuous above with the cerebral aqueduct of the midbrain and below with the central canal of the medulla oblongata and spinal cord. The fourth ventricle possesses lateral boundaries, a roof, and a rhomboid shaped floor. So a lateral boundary of the fourth ventricle consists of superiorly the superior cerebellar peduncle and inferiorly the inferior cerebellar peduncle. So roof or posterior wall of the fourth ventricle, the tent-shaped roof projects into the cerebellum. You can see here it is projecting into the cerebellum. The superior part is formed by the medial borders of the two cerebellar peduncles and a connecting sheet of white matter called the superior medullary velum. The inferior part of the roof is formed by the inferior medullary velum, which consists of thin sheet devoid of nervous tissue and formed by ventricular ependyma and its posterior covering of pia mater. This part of the roof is pierced in the midline by an aperture known as the median aperture. So in the midline, it is pierced by a median aperture which opens up into the subarachnoid space. Median aperture. The lateral recess extends laterally around the sides of the medulla and open anteriorly as the lateral openings of the fourth ventricle or the foramen of Luschka. So these are shown in the next slide. So you can see the foramen Luschka and the midline foramen Magendie. So from here, from these three openings, the fourth ventricle communicate with the the subarachnoid space. Thus, the cavity of the fourth ventricle communicate with the subarachnoid space through a single median opening and two lateral apertures. These important openings permit the cerebrospinal fluid to flow from the ventricular system into the subarachnoid space. And you can see here the superior medullary vellum. Superiorly, the roof is formed by the superior medullary vellum. This is the sheet of white matter, and the inferior medullary vellum, which is devoid of any nervous tissue. It is only the ependyma covering the ependyma and covered by the layer of pia mater. Now the floor of the fourth ventricle, it is also known as rhomboid fossa because of its rhomboid shape. You can see here the shape of the floor of the fourth ventricle, rhomboid shape. So this is known as rhomboid fossa. The floor is formed by the posterior surface of the lower or closed part of the pons. This is the lower part, this is the part of the pons, you can see, and the posterior surface of the open or upper part of the medulla oblongata. So this floor of the fourth ventricle consists of two parts, that is the dorsal surface of the pons and the lower pons and the dorsal surface of upper medulla. Now this is divided by fibers present. You can see the fibers here. These are known as stria medullaris. Stria medullaris. Now the floor is lined by ependyma and a thin layer of neuroglia beneath the ependyma and a layer of grey matter forming the various nuclei deep to the neuroglia. Now the parts. It is divisible into an upper triangular part formed by the dorsal surface of the pons, as I have told you, and the lower triangular part which is formed by the dorsal surface of the upper medulla. Now intermediate part is at the junction of the pons and medulla, and this intermediate part is prolonged laterally over the inferior cerebellar peduncle as the floor of the lateral recess. This part is marked by the transversely running fibers, which are fibers of the stria medullaris, as I have told you. These fibers represent fibers from the arcuate nucleus to the opposite cerebellum. Now common features of the floor. The dorsal median sulcus or the median sulcus divides the floor into two symmetrical halves. So this is the median sulcus. I will use another color for it. Okay. So the dorsal median sulcus. This is the dorsal median sulcus. Median sulcus. Median sulcus. Now this divides the floor into two equal halves. Now there is another sulcus known as sulcus limitans. Here you can see another sulcus that is known as the sulcus limitans, which is present in the upper part of the pons and extending into the lower part of the floor, that is the medulla. So this is the sulcus limitans. Here sulcus limitans. Now between the median sulcus and the sulcus limitans lie an area which is known as median eminence. Now the eminence is wider above and narrow below. It presents facial colliculus just opposite and medial to a depression called the superior fovea. Now here you can see in the upper part of the sulcus limitans, I will change the color. So the upper part of this sulcus limitans, it diverges here, and the lower part also diverges. So the area here is the superior fovea, while the area in the lower part is the inferior fovea. This is the inferior fovea at the lower limit of the sulcus limitans, and this is the superior fovea. Now the this part of this median eminence lies swellings which are known as facial colliculus. Now these swellings are due to, deep to this colliculus is the fibers of the facial nerve which are looping around the abducent nucleus. So this is also known as internal genu of the facial nerve. These are the fibers of the facial nerve, motor fibers of the facial nerve looping around the abducent nucleus. So the protuberance formed by these fibers is the facial colliculus. Facial colliculus. Facial colliculus. So lateral to the this medial eminence or lateral to the sulcus terminalis lies an area. This area, this is the vestibular area on both sides, vestibular area. Beneath this vestibular area lies the vestibular nuclei. Now a sulcus limits the median eminence on the lateral side. In the uppermost part of the sulcus limitans overlies an area that is bluish in color, and it is known as locus coeruleus. This color is due to presence of the pigmented neurons which constitute the substantia ferruginea. Substantia ferruginea. The upper part of the sulcus limitans is marked by a depression, as I have told you, which is known as superior fovea, which lie just lateral to the facial colliculus. So just lateral to the facial colliculus lie this superior fovea, and in the upper part of the sulcus limitans lie the bluish area which is known as locus coeruleus, and this is due to, and it is of blue color, and this is due to neurons, pigmented neurons, which constitute substantia ferruginea. In the medullary part of the floor, the sulcus limitans is marked by a depression known as inferior fovea, as I have told you before. Descending from the fovea, there is a sulcus that runs obliquely towards the midline. This sulcus divides the medial eminence into two triangles. So the medial eminence is divided into two triangles. One is that, and the other is that. Two triangles. These are the hypoglossal triangle medially and vagal triangle laterally. So hypoglossal triangle medially and vagal triangles laterally. These overlie the hypoglossal nerve nucleus and of vagus nerve. respectively. Between the vagal triangle above and gracile tubercle below, there is a small area known as area postrema. This one. So this is the gracile nuclei. So this area is the area postrema, which may function as chemoreceptors. And this area, the vestibular area that lies lateral to the inferior fovea or the sulcus limitans, which overlies the vestibular nuclei. Now this area partly lies in the vestibuli, where the pons, and partly in the medulla. Choroid plexus of the fourth ventricle. Choroid plexus has T shape. Now there is T-shaped choroid plexus in the fourth ventricle, and the vertical limb of the T is double. It is suspended from the inferior half of the roof of the ventricle, and it is formed from highly vascular tela choroidea. The tela choroidea is a two-layered fold of pia mater that projects through the roof of the ventricle and is covered by ependyma. So the function of choroid plexus again is production of CSF. The central canal of the spinal cord and the medulla oblongata. The central canal opens up superiorly into the fourth ventricle. You can see here it is opening up into the fourth ventricle, and inferiorly it goes through the entire length of the spinal cord. In the conus medullaris part of the spinal cord, it expands to form the terminal ventricle. The central canal is closed at its lower end and is filled with cerebrospinal fluid and is lined with ependyma. The central canal is surrounded by gray matter, the gray commissure. There is no choroid plexus in the central canal. Hydrocephalus. This is derived from Greek word. Hydro means water and cephalus means head. So head, water in the head. So there is excessive accumulation of cerebrospinal fluid resulting in abnormal widening of the spaces in the brain. So now you can see the causes. It can be due to abnormal increase in formation of CSF, or can be due to blockage of circulation of the CSF or diminished absorption of the CSF. Now types of hydrocephalus communicating. No obstruction is present within or to the outflow from the ventricular system. And non-communicating is that blockage is present at some point at its formation and the exit. Causes: blockage of circulation of CSF. It can be due to obstruction of the interventricular foramen, or due to obstruction in the cerebral aqueduct, or the obstruction of the median aperture and the lateral apertures. So these all causes can be due to the infections because of the exudate, or in case of cerebral aqueduct, a very common cause of congenital hydrocephalus is the stenosis of the cerebral aqueduct. So obstruction of the median apertures in the median aperture and the lateral aperture in the fourth ventricle can also result in the hydrocephalus. So these can be due to any tumor or growth in that area, or the exudate. Diminished absorption of CSF. This diminished absorption of CSF, so you know that the CSF from the subarachnoid space, it is absorbed into the venous sinuses by the arachnoid granulations. So any hindrance from here occurring into the granulations, that is again the infectious exudate blocking the passage, or the venous thrombosis, or increase in the pressure of the blockage of the internal jugular vein, or any pathology in the sinus can lead to the diminished absorption of CSF in the sinuses and resulting in hydrocephalus. Excessive formation of CSF, it can be due to tumor of the choroid plexus and can result in dilatations of the ventricles. How a patient with hydrocephalus presents, it is usually an infant with abnormally rapid head growth, head size. You can see here bulging fontanelles, tense non-pulsatile and dilated scalp veins. You can see here separated sutures because there is swelling and thinning of the skull bones. Poor head control, that is delayed milestones. So this kind of patient presents and with the complaint of, with the diagnosis of hydrocephalus. I hope this video made you understand the ventricles of the brain. Thank you.